This is the Arturia MiniLab 3 MIDI keyboard. In this video, I'm going to cover this new upgrade and if it is actually an upgrade. We're going to talk about the DAW compatibility, the features and functions of the keyboard, the pads, the keybed itself, the knobs, the faders, the screen, the whole nine. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this is Al B and I cover a lot of music production tips, gear, and software. If you're interested, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into it. This is the third generation of their beloved mini MIDI keyboards. I also own the MK2 version, the predecessor, and I have to say they've made some noticeable improvements with the MiniLab 3. They've made some noticeable improvements with the way the keyboard is designed, the way it looks, as well as some additional features that make a big difference between the version 2 and this third generation MiniLab 3. Starting with the keys feel really good. Quite honestly, they feel almost exactly the same as the MK2 keys feel, but that's actually a good thing because the MK2 keybed was one of the best keyboards that you can get in this price range, and the MiniLab 3 does not disappoint either. They are not too stiff and not too springy, but in my opinion fit just right. So if you are a pianist or someone who really likes to play the melodies by hand, you're going to be really pleased with how the keybed feels. Moving up to the drum pads, you have 8 velocity sensitive drum pads, and you also can make them any color you want. They're fully RGB backlit, so you can make them any color of the rainbow you choose, whether you're just trying to set the vibe of the studio or whether you're giving the pads specific colors so you know what they're doing. The choice is totally up to you. Now, although there are only 8 physical pads on the keyboard, you do have 2 banks, bank A and bank B, so really you have 16 different channels or different functions you can control with the pads. Now these drum pads do feel slightly better than the MK2 version drum pads, but not a crazy noticeable difference. I was only able to tell a difference because I literally have them side by side and compared them, and they do feel a little bit better than the MK2 does. They're pretty standard drum pads. They're not crazy great like the Akai MPK drum pads are, but nonetheless, they're pretty good drum pads, not too stiff and definitely not too squishy. I feel like I can really kind of tap a lot on these drum pads and not have many issues at all. On the left-hand side of the keyboard, you have your pitch and modulation strips, as well as your octave down and octave up buttons. And then at the top left, you have your shift and hold buttons, which become really important when it's time to navigate inside of the DAW, or whether you're controlling your arpeggiator and chord functions. Those buttons will become more handy then, but you also have a really nice LCD screen that shows you what you're controlling. It shows you what velocity you're hitting your pads and keys at. It also is how you use the controller to navigate across the different functions that you're trying to set, which are arpeggiation and chord mode. And so that LCD screen is a really important add-on here that gives you a lot of feedback on what you're actually doing with the controller. The keyboard has 8 total knobs that you use to control whatever you assign them to inside of your DAW, or if you're controlling Analog Lab, which we're going to talk about a little bit, you can use those 8 controls for that as well. To the left, you have a 9th knob that is used to navigate the different menus inside of the controller and inside of your DAW, depending on what mode you're in. On the far right, you have 4 sliders. Now, this is a difference from the MK2 version, which had no sliders. In this controller, they've opted to remove 8 of the knobs that were in the MK2 version and instead give you 4 sliders to give you a different kind of tactile feel to how you may want to control the different parts inside of your DAW. Which honestly, if I think about it, 16 knobs inside of the MK2 was kind of overkill, but I think they made a good decision here, removing those 8 knobs and giving you 4 sliders instead. Now moving on to the back of the keyboard, you have a full-size MIDI out port, you have a control port as well as a USB-C port. Now the MIDI out full-size port is really important for me because I do have synthesizers and I don't always want to stand up and actually work at the synthesizers. So I can use my MIDI out port and control it right from my desk, so I have an easier time moving between my analog gear and working inside of my DAW. Speaking of using this keyboard with the DAW, let's talk about the DAW compatibility and integration. As you would expect, this keyboard integrates with the most popular DAWs, including Logic Pro, Ableton Live, Bitwig, Reason, and FL Studio. One of the more important updates to this keyboard is that you now have transport controls with the MiniLab 3 that were not inside of the MK2. So now you have the ability to turn loop mode on or off. You have stop, play, and record right from the MIDI keyboard itself. The only slight annoyance here is you do have to use the shift mode to control and change your pads to transport mode to use these transport functions, but it's not really that big of a deal and still a worthy addition to the keyboard. While it is deeply integrated with Ableton Live, allowing you to actually control Ableton devices natively, it's not as integrated with, say, FL Studio, which is my DAW of choice. And FL Studio is limited to choosing presets inside of Flex and Analog Lab itself. I'm going to follow up with another video on how I use this keyboard with FL Studio and my custom workflow that gives you the best functionality out of this keyboard and adds on top of what Arturia has already done. I'm going to put a link on the screen and in the description to where you can find that. Now, going back to Analog Lab control, you can do a lot with this keyboard if you have Analog Lab. When you control Analog Lab, you can not only navigate the different presets, but once you go to a preset, you can then change the parameters of that preset, whether it's the reverb amount, whether it's the filter frequency, whatever you have on the preset, you're going to be able to control it natively from the keyboard. Now, this is going to be awesome for those of you who are into sound design and really just like to really customize your sounds. This is going to be clutch for you. You can also use it to browse the different types of sound without having to touch the DAW. So you can find your way around Analog Lab really easily, and in my opinion, this is one of the best features. It has better integration than you even find with Complete Control by Native Instruments and their Complete Control line of keyboards. This keyboard does come with arpeggiator and chord modes that you can control and set up right from the keyboard, and you can configure that however you want, whether you're making arpeggiation go up or down, and whether you're doing chord mode that's already built or you're making your own custom chord right on the keyboard. You do have that ability with the MiniLab 3. This is a new addition and an upgrade from the MK2. So what are my final thoughts on this keyboard? Is it really better than the MK2? Certainly. It is way better than the MK2. The MiniLab 3 brings additional functions like chord, arpeggiation, a full-size MIDI output, and then it has transport controls that you can use, and the integration with the DAW is a little bit better than it was with the MK2. The new LCD screen gives you a lot of feedback and kind of lets you know where you are in the menus of the keyboard and where you are in your DAW. When it comes to the form factor of the keyboard, that's a huge upgrade as well. For me, the way my studio looks and feels is important, and this keyboard definitely fits into that look. It has rounded edges, it has the nice white knobs where it was gray before, which in my opinion, I did not like, and that stood out to me. But these new white knobs look really good. The sliders look good, the keyboard itself looks really good with the wood grain on the side. So I really think this keyboard is a good fit for my studio, and it's great at the price range of $109. That is very comparable to most other keyboards within this range, and you get more features than I think you get with most keyboards within this range. So if you're looking for a new MIDI keyboard or looking to upgrade from an existing keyboard, I think the MiniLab 3 is certainly something you should consider. I'll put links in the description to where you can get this for yourself. Now, if you found this video helpful, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one.